Hey, it's Huck. And I'll be honest, I hadn't really wanted to do a video for the last couple of weeks because I had to go to the dentist. Maybe because I'm on the daily dosage of prednisone and have been now for a couple of years. I have suffered a lot of bone loss. And as a result, I'm getting cavities below what normally would be the gum line, and these teeth have got to go. And unfortunately this time I had to take a tooth that was closer to the front. And so I kind of look like a hillbilly, I guess. I was afraid the last couple of weeks that if I showed my face, people would mistake me for a Trump supporter. Okay, that was uncalled for. At any rate, as you can see, I'm not going to be smiling much anymore. At any rate, so that's what's been happening here, and I don't know what I'm going to do about my mouth. But I thought I would talk to you a little bit today about the passing of Senator John McCain. Now, Senator John McCain is one of the last Republicans that I actually have real respect for. I can't say that I have any respect for virtually any of the Republicans left in Washington that at least hold office anymore in Washington. McCain, first of all, deserves our respect for his heroic service in the Vietnam War, and it is hard to imagine what he endured in the more than 5.5 years as a POW prisoner in Hanoi, and the level of torture that he was made to endure, including having surgery with no anesthetic and re-breaking his one of his arms. The fact that he refused to go home when he was given the opportunity and refused to do so, keeping with our military's protocol of prisoners of war refusing to go home until their other prisoners of war who were captured before them were also released. He was given the opportunity to be released because the Vietnamese thought it might be something that would work in their favor should they release him, given that his father was about to be installed as the head of all naval command in the theater. So you've got to respect him for that. But he had a reputation all during his time in Washington as being, as they like to say, a maverick, someone who seemed to have almost as much, or if not more, joy getting on the case of fellow Republicans than he did with Democrats, and there were a couple of issues in particular where he tended to strongly disagree with many of his Republicans, particularly later in his career. Immigration was certainly one of those. Any time that he felt that Republicans were soft on one of our combatants, whether that be the war in Iraq or Afghanistan or elsewhere, he was I think to his dying day he always felt that Vietnam was a winnable war, which just goes to show you that when they describe John McCain as a hawk, they're not just whistling an Arizona tune. But nevertheless, there were times when he stood up for the right thing, what he believed to be the right thing, and really said the hell with the consequences. And one of those times, which most Americans should be eternally grateful for, was when he, shortly after he had had his surgery done over his eyebrow, and they discovered that this blood clot they removed was actually a brain tumor, the same type of cancer that had killed someone he very much looked up to and respected on the other side of the aisle, Senator Ted Kennedy. His doctors had suggested, strongly recommended, that he stay in Arizona, and where he was being seen at the Mayo Clinic there in Arizona. And they suggested, rather than to go back to Florida, or go back to Washington, where they were at that time, this would have been last spring, in 2017, they were in the midst of that whole debate over the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. They wanted him to stay and immediately undergo radiation and chemotherapy for what they now knew to be an aggressive cancer in his brain. And he was able to convince his doctors that no, he needed to get to Washington and he would be all right. And so he came to Washington and not only famously spoke against Trump and against the Republican plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act, denouncing what in fact their replacement plan was for the fraud that it really was. And then famously appeared on the day of the vote and rather dramatically cast the final and deciding vote against the repeal. And it was really thanks to him and his two Republican female colleagues, Senator Collins of Maine and Senator Mikulski of Alaska, that doomed that effort by Republicans in what would have cost millions of Americans their health care, including all of those millions of Americans who have now the benefit of Medicaid, thanks to the Medicaid expansion in the ACA. For that and several other reasons, Senator McCain was a thorn in the side of Donald Trump for sure, but also a man who, right or wrong, had his principles and stood up for them. And while he would be the first to admit that he made many mistakes along the way, I think it is fair to say that he always thought he was putting his country first, above politics and above his own personal gain. There are many, many times I disagreed with Senator John McCain, and I know that history will record when the books are written, that when he ran for office himself, particularly in 2008, when he was able to wrestle the nomination, he kind of seemed to give in on some of his principal stands, and seemed to go along more along the party line. But in retrospect, I suppose it can be said that most politicians, be they Republican or Democrat, often have to toe that type of line, that type of party line, in order to secure the nomination of their party when they're running for major office. And then once they get in office, they generally still have that option of whether they can be their own man or not. And what we've seen all too prominently here is that you know, for many people holding office today, and Republicans more than ever, the party line seems to be more important than anything else. And of course that brings us to the complete catastrophe that we find ourselves in with the Trump administration and a Republican Party in power in the Congress that refuses to do the type of oversight and the type of enforcement of norms and constitutional law that it is obligated to do. I'm going to talk a little bit more about where Trump finds himself right now, which fortunately for the rest of us, I think we can say is not a very good place for him. He is finding that all of his longtime friends and allies are slowly being forced to give it up, so to speak, if not willingly, then reluctantly. But whether it's be his longtime financial CEO of the Trump organization, someone that he inherited from his father's organization before him, or whether it be you know, this David Pecker from AMI Media, National Enquirer, among those the many media outlets that he owns, and I'm sure others that we haven't heard about. You know, and there's still a lot, I think, that we don't know, that Robert Mueller does know. And so I am optimistic heading into the midterms that I think Donald Trump is maybe seeing the Trump empire starting to collapse around him. And it'll be interesting to see you know, how quickly that unfolds, if in fact it does. And anyway, we'll be doing a video on that relatively quickly. Personally, I'm not in a good place right now. I've had some money going out on things like, I say, I've had to go see doctors, I've had to go see dentists, I've had to, couple of other little things that have had to be taken care of here. This was just a bad month all the way around, I guess. But at any rate, I had to take my dog in. I found out that, you know, my dog was starting to cough a lot. And even when, you know, I thought she had COPD like me from all the years of my, you know, smoking, and my mom before me smoking, and my dad, that, you know, she had been around it all her life pretty much. And, you know, now that I've taken steps to make sure that I'm nowhere near smoke, and that's going on now 2 months, I was hoping to see the same improvement in my dog, and in fact I've not. It's, if anything, she's gotten worse. I found out she's actually 11 years old. I took her into the vet the other day, and he tells me, although he's not certain, he'd have to do an x-ray, and maybe the next time we go in we might have to do that, but he's thinking she's got congestive heart failure, and that fluid is starting to, as a result, get in her lungs, and so that's what's happening. She's trying to cough that out. He did give me the vet did give me some 4 different medications to give her, and so I've been trying to treat her with that. She's been very clingy lately. Gigi is just laying on my lap all the time, and that's not like her. So I don't know. So like I said, I've had a lot of little emergencies to take care of here this month, and the good news is, though, health-wise, I'm doing okay. I've not had any flare-ups, you know, and this is really the whole last 2 months. I'm not as healthy. I'm not as able to, you know, I'm not able to get up and do as, you know, the kind of physical things I was hoping that I'd be able to do by now. Like I say, the weather, when it gets really warm outside, and we've had a lot of hot weather, a lot of humid weather, it still takes it out on old Huck. And I'm surprised that even in the house, with the air on, which I can't afford to be running every day, but you know, I'm still having trouble like going down to the basement, even with my oxygen on, to you know, to do my. I tried to go down there yesterday to do some washing, and my goodness, I couldn't believe how out of breath I was. I mean, it really was. So I don't know. I guess it's just you know, some days I'm going to be like that, and now today I feel much better. So I don't know. I guess it's just going to have to get used to that. Anyway, I wanted to post this. I'm sorry I've kind of rambled on. I really wanted to do a you know, very organized, scripted, if you will, kind of a video, kind of putting this up to date on the whole, you know, Donald Trump situation, because so much has happened and has been in the news, and it's hard to keep track of it all. And so maybe I'll still try to get around to doing that. But I get so frustrated that I don't have the motivation to get around to doing that, and so ultimately I finally just sit down and ramble. Anyway, I hope you can live with Huck, with old toothless Huck here for a while, because it is going to be. I can't even imagine. They want for me to get the tooth thing done. You know, they've suggested, well, I could take out some kind of a credit thing, you know, where you know, I could take so many months to pay or whatever it is. I think it's 6 months no interest, or you could get up to, like, I don't know what it is, 48 months or even 60 months. But then the longer you go, the more interest they charge. And I'm thinking, you know, I don't want to. I'm still trying to pay off credit cards that I could not pay if I weren't getting help. So anyway, the dentures are going to have to be put off. At any rate, I'm not even going to try to think about that for a while. So anyway, I thank you for watching. I hope you all are enjoying your final days of summer here. Or at least, I don't know, I think summer lasts until, like, what, September 20th? It's just that around here, you know, summer seems to come to an abrupt end. Usually right around Labor Day or shortly before or after. I don't know. It's weird. The way I kind of gauge it is when the night starts going down into the 50s. You know, then that's the end of summer. And we're already starting to see some of these really cold, well, cooler, you know, 55 degree summer nights. So, I mean, that's okay for sleeping and stuff. I don't mind it, but but let's face it, it's not summer. Anyway, I thank you for watching. I would love to hear your comments on what you think of Senator McCain, pros and the cons. We'll see you again real soon.